Hi, everybody. My name is Marc Cohen, and I am really grateful to Walter and to the Worthy Educator for allowing me a few minutes of your time to talk about something that's been a big part of my professional career, my personal life for my entire life, and that's policy. Uh, entire life. I think the first time that I can remember having an influence on policy was in 1979. I was 7 years old and I had to go to bed at 8 o'clock at night. And that just wasn't fair. It wasn't fair for a lot of reasons. Most of my friends were able to stay up later. My older brother, Rich, was able to stay up much later. It felt like there was always a lot more fun happening after 8 p.m. And I wasn't tired. I had a lot of really good reasons for wanting to change that policy. Um, and so I advocated for myself. I went to my parents with each of those reasons. And I also offered alternative solutions because they were concerned that if I stayed up later, that I would be grumpy in the morning, that I wouldn't be well enough rested for school, that my learning would suffer. And so we made a deal ultimately. We came to a compromise that I would be able to stay up first until 8:30, and then if that worked out later until 9. But there were uh, certain requirements. I had to make sure that I got all of my chores taken care of, that I didn't fight with my brothers, and that I certainly wasn't grumpy in the morning, and they didn't get any phone calls from school that I was falling asleep in class. And ultimately, I was very successful in meeting those requirements, and my bedtime changed, and a lifetime of advocacy began. Flash forward many years, I was a teacher, and then an assistant principal, and ultimately became a principal in a district on the East Coast in Maryland. And I had the opportunity to advocate at a slightly different level. I was invited to testify before the legislators who were on the education subcommittee looking to reauthorize the Elementary Secondary Education Act. It's about the same, about the same. Um, and that was an incredible experience. I went in; they had defined some challenges. I offered some insights and some additional challenges that I thought maybe they hadn't themselves thought about. And ultimately, those legislators and their aides put together a package of legislation that um, really shaped what we experienced as educators for many years to come. And I want to suggest that I played a huge role in that. I was just one small piece, but maybe that's the point, right? All of our voices matter in policy and in policy work, whether we're uh, 7 years old advocating for a later bedtime, or we're a lot older than seven advocating for common sense assessment and common sense funding and practical approach to um, how we do this thing called education. So my point in sharing those two stories at the start of this is a basic one, and that is, if you're here looking to learn about what policy is and how you can advocate for policy, I suspect you've already figured out you're already doing it. You've been doing it for many years, and so my goal in the next couple of minutes is just to put a couple of bows on the experiences that you already have. Um, so we're not going to spend any more time talking about the policies within our homes, but I do think it's important to share that policy is not just federal. It's not just federal and state. It's not even just federal, state, and local district jurisdiction. uh, you as an educator, depending on and maybe because of your position, can influence also the policy that happens within each and every schoolhouse. Um, and I think that's an important distinction to make at the outset. No policy is too small, and there's no policy that is unimportant enough that it should not invite and include the voices of as many stakeholders as possible. Who should be in the room influencing policy? Uh, I'm sure many of you right now are automatically saying, well, the teachers should be there because they're the ones who are delivering the instruction. Maybe central office folks should be there because they're the ones who are purchasing and training the curriculum, making decisions about the rollout of curriculum or assessments. The principals should be there because they are evaluating and implementing the policy. But I offer to you that there's a lot of other voices that should be in the room. Parents should be in the room. They offer a perspective that, although we don't always necessarily want to hear what they have to say, I've never had an experience where what they had to say wasn't vitally important to my thinking, especially when it challenged my thinking. Speaking of challenging my thinking, students, when possible, when age appropriate, and even when you think it's not age appropriate, but still might be helpful, getting the student voice is really important. I had the chance to coach a principal in a district in the Midwest, and the principal was interested in changing the policy around lunchtime recess. And boy, if you can think of a stakeholder group that is less impacted by the change of policy around lifetime or lunchtime recess than a kindergartner, you're a better person than I am. And so I encouraged her to talk with the kids about what they liked about the way recess was happening at the time, what they didn't like about it, how they felt that it could be handled better, what challenges did they experience that maybe she hadn't known about before. And those kids, those 5 and 6 year olds, definitely influenced the policy that was moved forward in a way that maybe wouldn't have happened had their voices not been engaged. And so my point there is, who should be involved in the conversation around policy? Everybody. And I, as a principal, especially, and in my time as a district leader, uh, it was really important for me to have naysayers in the room. I never wanted a room filled with people who thought that my ideas were just the most brilliant in the world, especially around something as important as policy. Give me your contrarians, man. If you can get the contrarians on board with a policy, you know you've done the work, that you've gotten close to what is really necessary in shaping the work of schools. um, Walter asked me to talk about how policy gets made. I think you all know the basics. I suspect you all know the basics of that, but maybe just to give the 30,000 foot view, you start by identifying a problem. You identify who needs to be part of the discussion, and then you bring people together and you just talk. You have honest conversations. You look at the data. You engage in root cause analysis. What's really creating this challenge? Is this something that can be fixed by the policy as we're changing it? Or are we going to be creating new policies? I remember many years ago, we were wrestling with equity and how we could increase the performance of all of our students while also closing the gaps that existed for some of our students. And we made the decision as a leadership team. I don't remember whose idea it was. It certainly wasn't mine because it was way too brilliant. We made the decision to look at all of our own internal policies and to try to identify places where we had unintentionally created barriers to the exact kind of success that we were looking to create. And lo and behold, we found some. And I wasn't new to the school at the time, which meant I owned those mistakes. But because I had a team around me, lots of different voices around me, they were able to pick up on some things that I, quite frankly, hadn't considered. One of those policies was we had a practice of leveling some of our classes. The example I'll give is English ninth grade English. We had on level 9, which was for many of our students. We had honors English 9 as well, and the truth was there was very little difference between on level and honors curriculum. The honors curriculum was a little bit faster. The tests maybe were a little bit more rigorous, but by and large, the curriculum was basically the same. I was a former English teacher, so I feel comfortable stating that as fact. And so we ultimately we looked at that, and the reason why this was brought forward by this teacher was because We also discovered a major challenge, and that was the students who were in our on level English classes were far less likely, by large percentage points, far less likely to wind up in the advanced placement English courses by the time they were juniors and seniors. In fact, virtually none of them wound up taking an advanced placement English course in 11th or 12th grade. Whereas with the honors kids, more than half of them were, they were the pipeline for those courses. So the challenge, right? We've got a curriculum that's virtually the same, but the result was very different, getting our kids into these rigorous classes. And so we made a policy change. It was a well thought out policy change. We engaged in lots of vigorous debate about whether it was the right thing to do. Were we creating any unintended consequences? And what we did was we combined all of those classes. We made them all honors classes. We didn't tell the teachers which kids were the so-called honors kids versus the so-called on-level kids, and the results were staggeringly stunning. Um, uh, Prior to that decision, um, uh, somewhere around 73, 74% of our kids in the on-level classes earned a C or better in the class. In the honors class, well over 90% of the kids earned a C or better in the honors English 9. When we combined all of the classes, didn't change anything about the curriculum, by the way. We delivered the honors curriculum with fidelity. When we combined the students into one classroom and didn't let them know that they were an honors kid or an on-level kid, they were all honors kids. Um, we were astonished that a greater percentage of those kids, almost 94% of those students, earned a C or better. Again, delivering the curriculum and the assessment with fidelity, the kids just did remarkably better. We had eliminated a policy or changed a policy that was having a direct impact on how students saw themselves as learners. And in the end, we changed the face, literally and figuratively. We changed the face of who was going into our advanced placement classes. And just because I don't want to be subtle, we also had a problem with a level of, or a lack of diversity. Our African American Hispanic students were not being encouraged in by policies like the one I just talked about into our most advanced courses, and now they were, and experiencing great success. So that's really how policy gets made at the local level, and it's no different even at the federal level. You identify a big policy and or a big challenge. Our kids across the country are not reading at the same level as students around the world. They're not performing math at the same level, or our businesses are telling us that students are not prepared with the skills they need to collaborate or to problem solve, or technology is far surpassing our teachers' knowledge, and our kids are even surpassing us in what they know about technology and how to use it in their learning. And so finding a way through policy to make changes is absolutely critical. Who gets involved? I've already talked about that. Everybody should be involved in these conversations, both at the local, state, and federal level. And I want to end this spiel by sharing that you should be involved. You should get involved if you care enough about education and about this work that you've watched this video for the last 13 minutes and 45 seconds. That means that you have something to say. You have enough of an interest and probably enough of an expertise that your voice really would matter in that room. So I want to strongly encourage you to reach out to Walter, to other colleagues in the field. Reach out to me. You can find me on LinkedIn, Marc Cohen, MARC Cohen, EDD, or you can find me on my website, theleadershiplink.net, or you can find me through Walter if you don't want to go through any of those channels. I'm not trying to sell you anything. I'm happy to talk with you about how you can best serve as an advocate in this profession. We need you now more than ever. We need your voice now more than ever. And I want to thank you for taking time to hear some of these thoughts. And again, Walter, and to the worthy educator, thank you for allowing me a few moments to share them.